in 2015 at NASA Ames. We became a startup in 2017 and graduated from the Rebel Bio SOSV Accelerator program. We've raised $130,000 from SOSV and Angels and are currently partnering with Venture Networks for a Series A round. We have 2 committed breweries and are negotiating for 3 municipal units. We have sold several urban farming units, including to MasterCard. We have a US patent pending and have been published in publications like Syn Bio Beta and California Craft Brewing Business. Our most recent presentations were at the Bay Area Maker Faire, Women in Clean Tech and Sustainability, and Green Business Verge Circular. Our current goals are to complete our pilot program, our pilot units, complete our current sales orders, and to raise $10 million with that Series A. And we're also looking for working partners for a $50,000 round with discounted prices for that Series A share for operational and legal expenses. And in the next 3 years, we will establish a strong presence in the Pacific Northwest in the alcohol and urban farming markets, complete our municipal and agricultural units, and get ready to expand across the rest of the US. And we're choosing an entry market that everyone loves, beer. Brewing creates a lot of wastewater that typical treatment plants can't normally handle. And our competition for on-site treatment largely looks like this. Completely impractical for small breweries, which are actually 95% of the breweries in the US. New Leaf turns that water pain into growth. Some breweries pay millions for wastewater treatment. A small brewery might need 3 of our units, and at under $10,000 a unit, we're a fraction of the cost. And as we work our way through regulations, we also have aquaponic and urban farming units with a similar beautiful DIY design for bootstrap revenue. And in terms of market, it's worth noting that over 80% of the world's water goes untreated. New Leaf seeks to open up the wastewater market and turn that into profit. In the US alone, our total market is $270 billion. And with a specific focus on the Pacific Northwest and alcohol and urban farming markets, that number is $6 billion. And with this untapped potential, our goal is to IPO in 5 years or less. And this is the team that can get this done. I'm Rachel, CEO, and my co-founder and CTO, Ari, is over there. We leverage a mixture of eco-friendly and high-tech skills for creative do-it-yourself biotech. We're founded on the belief that by looking through nature's lens, the solutions for the world's greatest challenges are right outside our window. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Next, it's my pleasure to welcome Perry from Acala to the stage, who's closing the guidance gap for college students.
Hello, everybody. My name is Perry Kelmis. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Acala. Our platform is the first scalable solution to be able to deliver high-quality college admissions guidance to our nation's youth. We are proud to be graduates of Google Launchpad and the GSV Pioneer Accelerators. Our team has a deep domain expertise in college admissions consulting. We have a combined 45 years of experience servicing over 15,000 students, and we created Acala to close the massive guidance gap that exists in America today. So I want to introduce you guys to Lauren. Lauren hails from Patterson, Louisiana, and in 9th grade, Lauren dreams of going to technical school. And she'll tell you that there's nothing wrong with technical school, but in Patterson, Louisiana, that's as big as you're told that you're allowed to dream. So through a series of crazy events in her life, she ends up in Los Angeles and in our program, and she's lucky because students like Lauren, most students in America, are up against incredible odds. There are 17,000 high schools in America that do not have a dedicated college counselor. That amounts to about 25 million kids who do not have access to any guidance on how to get into the complicated nature of, how to navigate the complicated nature of getting into college. A lot of schools do have guidance counselors, but they're tasked with doing a million other things, and they don't have time to college counsel. And when you tack on to that the fact that the average student to counselor ratio is 500 to 1 nationwide. In California, it's as high as 1,000 to 1 if you even have a counselor. Kids are just not getting any guidance. The next problem is that kids are thinking about college far too late, usually in the back half of their junior year. And as a result, They're missing huge opportunities to be better college applicants, and in underserved areas, a lot of times they're falling off the path to college. And finally, if you do want to hire a private college counselor, you're looking at rates of $200 to over $1,000 an hour. It's obviously cost prohibitive for most of society. So for us, the big number is 84%. Of the very small number of disadvantaged kids who actually make it to college, 84% of them drop out. That's unacceptable. So we created Acala. Acala is a college admissions counseling platform that onboards students as early as 8th grade, and then through AI, data, and real college counselors, guides the students' decision-making all the way through high school, so that by the time they get to senior year, they're the best possible college applicants that they can be. And they're not uttering the words that all of their friends are uttering that every grade 12 student utters, which is, why didn't anyone tell me this information? I wish I would have known. With Acala, everything's customized to the kid's school, and the town that the kid lives in. So for example, let's say you don't know what extracurricular you know you're supposed to do extracurriculars. You don't know which one you should do. Well, you could take our quick survey. It's just 24 photos. Kids really like it. You pick the categories that interest you, and then when you hit submit, up comes all the clubs at your school that have anything to do with your interest categories. And if you don't know what something like academic decathlon is, you can watch a YouTube video and start to explore different options that are in your interest categories. Same thing with community service. You could select from a number of categories where you'd like to help the world. You hit submit, up comes a bunch of organizations in your town where you can go volunteer in the categories where you would love to help the world. Same thing with summer experiences, and then calendars. What's crazy is everybody in this room uses a calendar. If you were all high school kids, and we've done this before, I said, how many of you use a calendar? Not one hand would go up, right? This is a core life skill. So we get kids using calendars as early as 8th grade. It's all color-coded for them. They really like it. Also, TED Talks. Kids really love TED Talks, and this gets them really exploring their world so that they can start to find the pathways that they would like to take, and then we help them find the schools that obviously help them fulfill their dreams. And in schools where, counselor ratios are so high, for us, our kids feel like the ratio is 1-to-1. The addressable market for us is about 13 million kids domestically, another 5 million kids abroad. Traction-wise, we're in 7 charter schools with 500 kids on the platform. We are about to announce a very exciting partnership with the Police Athletic League and also the Boys and Girls Club. We feel that youth engagement organizations are the best way, not just for scalability, but also for effectiveness of our platform. We also launched a 40-person pilot program where individuals just sign up at $49.99 a month, and we're really excited about that. And we made $130,000 in China. We're really excited about the potential for scale in China. It's really quite a lucrative country. And competition-wise, most of our competition focuses too much on college search, match, and selection geared towards grade 11 students. We feel that that's too late. A lot of our competition is also way too expensive. On the nonprofit side of things, we love all the things those companies are doing. However, they're not scalable. We raised a $550,000 pre-seed. We're now raising a $3 million seed. And we would love for any of you to join us in this critical journey to get kids the necessary guidance to get them both to and through college. Thank you. Oh, wait. I forgot about Lauren. Well, Lauren never made it to technical school. I'm really proud to report that after coming through our platform, she's going to be graduating in 4 years from the number 10 university in the country, which is Northwestern. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Perry. Next, it's my pleasure to welcome David from Torque, who's redefining the rehabilitation experience.
I'm David Elzey, CEO and founder of Torque 3. We're developing a neurorehabilitation platform that can be used for significantly better recovery outcomes. And while we recognize that our platform has broad application, our focus is on stroke, as it's the leading cause of disability in the world, including the United States, where this year there will be 680,000 new stroke survivors, joining the 7 million already in recovery. And these folks are looking at months, years, or even a lifetime of rehabilitation, yet fewer than 10% will achieve a level of outcome that will allow them to live an active, independent lifestyle. And this is where Torque 3 can make a profound difference. You see, our approach has yielded two prime advantages. We can significantly increase neuroplasticity using intense, deeply immersive interactive experiences. And with our advanced robotics, we can completely mitigate the effects of hemiplegia during treatment. Now, these two prime advantages, the enhancement of neuroplasticity and the mitigation of hemiplegia, make Torque 3 stand apart. Now, make no mistake, neuroplasticity is the key to recovery from any type of brain injury. It's how the brain remaps neural pathways to restore functionality. And this process can be triggered and even manipulated through certain types of experiences. We accomplish this through a suite of simulation technologies that operate as an integrated system using our proprietary hardware and software. And we also have advanced robotics that allow us to mitigate hemiplegia. Now, hemiplegia is the partial paralysis along one side of the body that is common with stroke. And as you can imagine, this causes not only undue struggle for the patient, but severely limits treatment options. We use interlinked systems that instantly compensate the impaired side to provide a smooth experience for the patient as if they were just simply not impaired. Now, we have several other options I don't have time to really get into the details with, but quick cover is we provide injury protection against overexertion, integrated pain management. We're a unified treatment platform that can handle multiple treatments simultaneously in the same session. And because of our high level of automation, we do operational streamlining like rapid turnaround between patients. We have automated progress reporting, and a single therapist can manage multiple patients simultaneously. We are the only solution with any of these advantages. Now, our market is the 28.5% of Americans that have insurance providers covering their rehabilitation at this point. That small section within the U.S. is still a greater than a $24 billion market. Currently, we have a proof of concept prototype. It's a fully functioning prototype. We have a deal in the works with a university in Germany that will be doing our trials this summer. They will actually be a strategic partner that will be putting quite a bit of money into the project. And after we complete that and a pilot program, we'll be going into our go-to-market strategy will be phase 1. In the Bay Area, we will be delivering at no cost and no commitment to inpatient facilities and instead relying on revenue share. We'll charge on a per-use basis on each of these systems. This will quickly allow us to scale throughout the Bay Area. Each of these units will draw in about $125,000 a year in phase 1. And we see about 200 units available in the Bay Area. Phase 2 is use them as a feeder, have our own centers. Each of those units will pull in about $500,000 a year, and we see our saturation point somewhere around 1,200 units in the Bay Area. After deploying out to the adjacent regions, we will simply select new regions to expand to, rinse and repeat. The management team we have is myself. This is my 4th startup. A previous startup was, we focused on delivering location-based, deeply immersive, interactive experiences. So you can see this is well within my wheelhouse. And we worked with major brands, museums, and major events. Dr. Lacey is the former Director of Neurorehabilitation at Fort Walter Reed. My CTO has been working with me for 16 years. And we are currently at the pre-seed level. We've already raised $83K of $250K. I highly recommend anybody that's interested in this, come talk to me. Let's set up a demo. Once you ride this thing and understand it, it's puts you on a completely different mindset of what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Next, it's my pleasure to welcome Zoe from CryptoWork, who's putting integrity back into business data.
Hello everyone, my name is Zoe. I'm Customer Success Manager at CryptoWork, and we help enterprises to make data trustable. I think every one of us knows that the data we are using in daily basis increases drastically. We use data to make business decisions, process decisions, product decisions, marketing decisions, but the question is, how can we ensure that the data we are using is trustable? More important, how can enterprises make sure or ensure that the data they are using is trustable and data compliant? The challenge is clear, data compliance is not optional at the moment anymore. Companies like Facebook and Google are really struggling to be data compliant with regulations, and as a result, they have to pay fees of billions of dollars. So what is the challenge for enterprises today? Organizations are really struggling to meet increasingly strict data compliance requirements like regulations of HIPAA, SOX, GDPR, or ISO 9000. And the typical data compliance process is really slow, manual, costly, and resource intensive. And it also interrupts the business flow. So we at CryptoWork came up with a solution that allows organizations to verify the integrity of any digital asset at massive scale using blockchain technology. We developed the first GDPR and CCPA compliant data integrity blockchain cloud service. As most of you know, blockchains having some disadvantages, such as scalability and the pricing point. But we solve two of these problems. We make blockchain scalable and cost-effective. Our technology can verify up to 1 million digital assets per second, and we are also 100 times lower in transaction cost. Overall, our solution is fully auditable, GDPR compliant, and interoperable. It is very simple to integrate into existing business processes and existing enterprise systems, and we also ensure the highest level of security. To give you an overview where our technology fits in, you see several existing enterprise systems, and the original data always stays in your original enterprise system. We only use a copy of the data, a so-called hash, and put this hash into any kind of blockchain, the blockchain of your choice. To make it clear, we don't develop our own blockchain. We are a layer on top of several blockchains, and at the moment we have adapters to more than 20 blockchains. So who uses our product CryptoWork Horizon at the moment? We focus on direct sales to enterprises in the manufacturing system, IoT applications, supply chains, and of course the industry where compliance is the biggest problem. We also partner up with OEMs, service providers, and system integrators. And the perfect customer for us is an enterprise customer where high volume of data and strict data compliance and strong audit requirements are available. To give an overview of customers we are working with at the moment, we have closed several customers and POCs during the last year, and also focusing on closing more deals, of course, in the upcoming years. So our mission is really to enable a new generation of data compliance applications that fuel digital transformation. We are founded in 2016. We are headquartered here in Silicon Valley on the 3rd floor at GSVlabs. Our team, the founding team, are really experts in cryptography and enterprise systems, and I'm really glad to be part of this team. We have global investors, customers, and partners, and raised up to 5 million up to date, and completing our Series A with additional 4 million. An overview of our team and advisors, and that's all.
Thank you, Zoe. And certainly, last but not least, our final startup pitch. It's my pleasure to welcome Kaba to the stage with Encounter AI, who's transforming how restaurants interact with their customers.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Kabakanda. I am the co-founder and COO of Encounter AI. And I'd just like to ask, do you remember the last time you went to the drive-thru, or a time when you went to your favorite drive-thru and you just got terrible service and something about your order was wrong? It just, is really disappointing and upsetting for you, I'm sure. But that is not a unique experience. The quick service restaurant industry services over 17 billion orders, and 70% of those orders go through the drive-thru, and over 1 billion are wrong. It's really preposterous. So you went to go get your favorite comfort food to make you happy, and you end up feeling like this lady, just angry and disappointed, and you probably never want to go back there again. But for you, it's probably a $5, maybe $10 problem. No big deal. For this industry, however, it is a multi-billion-dollar problem. Not only do they lose hundreds of millions of dollars on those orders that had to be replaced or refunded from being wrong, they just lost you as a customer. And to illustrate the severity of this problem, 5 of the top 20 quick service restaurant brands actually lost locations from last year to this year. They have less locations now than they did last year, including McDonald's and Subway. So it really is an industry in crisis trying to figure out how to shore up their customer service problem. And that's where we come in. Our mission is to offer the best, fastest, friendliest service at all quick service restaurants. And we do that by deploying a voice-activated conversational AI directly into the drive-thru, but can also work at kiosk and on a mobile device. But like I said, 70% of their orders go through the drive-thru, so that's our focus. And with our solution, not only can we not have those billions of orders wrong every single year, we also can manage promotions, loyalty, and things of that nature, making it a full service experience. But the magic really happens because we use AI to help personalize that experience as well, completely transforming that experience you have when you go through the drive-thru or go inside a quick service restaurant. And the question is, why is this important? Why now? Well, the only alternative up to this point without being innovative is to just retrain your staff to do better service or hire more people who can do the job better. But unfortunately, they're currently in a labor crisis. The quick service restaurant industry has a staggering 150% turnover rate. And an employee only stays for an average of 30 days. So the reason you got such bad service is that person was only employed for 2 weeks, but they're already thinking about what they're going to do next. So in order for them to fix their customer service problem, it's not going to happen just through their workforce. And in fact, they're losing $12 billion a year just on turnover. So it's time for them to innovate. And the future of work in the quick service restaurant industry is a combination of human plus AI. And that's where we come in. Given the issues that they're having with their workforce and needing AI to really set the foundation of their future, this is a massive industry. Over $2 billion in the US alone and an additional $6 billion internationally. Up to this point, we've raised $250K pre-seed, and we're currently raising $1.5 million seed round in order to build our team to be able to scale our product. It's our founders, myself and Derek Johnson, the CEO. Derek Johnson has many years of experience in the quick service restaurant industry. He once owned his own location of a quick service restaurant, Freshie. And he's also a consultant to one of the largest franchisees in the country who owns over 100 locations of Burger King, Pizza Hut, and Auntie Anne's. So he really is a domain expert. And in addition to being a data scientist, he built our current prototype of our product. And we decided to team up to solve this problem, and I'm using my experience in product development and deployment from my work at Adobe. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kaba. And thanks. Let's get one more round of applause to all of our presenters tonight. Some really phenomenal pitches. Next, we're going to take one moment and then be really excited to welcome a quick interview to the stage to hear some background tips and tricks when it comes to early stage fundraising. Our judges are going to convene and ultimately determine who the winner was. And while that's happening, we're really excited to share some perspectives on the early stage fundraising ecosystem. So with that, it's my pleasure to welcome Slater McLean from the GSVlabs team and Laura Druyan, the Managing Director of Silicon Valley Data Capital.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Alec. I appreciate the introduction. For those of you standing in the back over here, there are a ton of available seats over on this side. So if you don't want to stand anymore and want to come over here, there is some extra room. But with that said, we're going to kind of jump right into it. My name is Slater McLean. I'm Startup Director and Product Manager here at GSVlabs. I work a lot on our Passport platform, which provides resources to founders from all over the world. Really great product. If you guys haven't checked it out yet, I definitely would. But enough about me. I want to introduce Laura, who's so kindly come here to kind of help give us some information about fundraising in an early stage. So, Laura, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background.
I joined Silicon Valley Data Capital only about a month ago, but this is not my first tour of duty in venture capital. I started my career in technology as a product manager at Silicon Graphics, which many of you are probably too young to know, but was a very hot company at its day, doing everything from chips through software. I was a product manager in software. I shipped about 12 products. I was a venture capitalist with a couple different places, and I ran corp dev at 2 different companies, Perch, a really late-stage private company, and Lending Tree, when a friend of mine at Andreessen Horowitz called and said the CEO of RBC, the Royal Bank of Canada, which is, believe it or not, the 10th largest bank in the world, is looking for you, but he doesn't know how to find you. So I was hired to start and run an innovation group at Royal Bank of Canada, which I did for 3.5 years before heading back to venture capital with Jim McClain. So I've been in really large companies and have also worked with entrepreneurs the entire time, pretty much.
Nice. It's really cool to see the breadth of experience you've had kind of in the space.
It just means I'm old.
Well, we're not going to go there. So, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about SVDC and kind of what you guys invest in, where you invest?
Sure. So Silicon Valley Data Capital is a $60 million seed and early stage venture fund. We focus on next generation enterprise technology, as well as fintech if it's not just consumer facing. And we do small seeds, 250K, 500K, sort of sub-million. And then we hope that a bunch of those graduate to become what we think of as core deals, where we'll lead an A of $3 to $4 million, and we'll also go into A's without having done the seed.
Very cool. That's always very helpful information for founders in the audience. Where I kind of want to start with this is, when should you start thinking about raising capital? I feel like I see a lot of founders who spend so much time trying to raise capital and not enough time actually building the business. So in your mind, is there a point where, okay, now is when I should start raising money?
I understand the temptation to raise money early. I think it's a question of how much you want to give up. And obviously also a question of how far along do you have to be. The good news is it's $250,000 to get a product, or at least a minimum viable product. The bad news is it's $250,000 to get a product out. And so that means it's really, really hard to rise above the noise. And the earlier you raise capital, the more of your company you give up. People look and they kind of go, well, I've talked to so many entrepreneurs, how do I retain control? The answer is, unfortunately, like many things in life, it's easiest to do when you need it the least. So that's a question. I've done a seed deal this summer where the founder is spending, even though he's closed, $1.5 million, he's got a lot of inbound before his seed was even announced from big name funds. And he's like, well, I'm talking to this fund and I'm talking to that fund. I'm like, stop talking to the funds. Like, go execute with the seed money you've raised, because the big funds can waste a lot of your time. And it's not in his interest to either A, raise capital too early because it'll be unduly dilutive, and B, he's not focused on running the business.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, something you kind of chatted about is bigger funds wasting a lot of time and things like that. How should an early stage founder be thinking about that as far as whether or not they should go after a bigger fund versus a smaller micro or kind of the angel side of things?
I think the challenge, one of my friends is a serial entrepreneur and highly successful, sold several companies, and she gave me really an interesting insight along, when her last company was sold to Cisco and she became CTO of Cisco, and that company had money from Sequoia, Kleiner Perkins, and trying to remember, maybe Foundation Capital. And she said one of the challenges for her in that particular company was that nobody cared that much, because for those funds, those were not particularly large checks because they were all marquee name funds, and they, as a result, she felt like she didn't really get anybody's attention. And so when some founders I was close to did a similar kind of seed round with Lightspeed and Greylock and some other big names, I said, this is not money, they're great names, but this isn't money I would take, because for these guys it's sort of a marketing expense rather than having real attention and potentially help from people who might be really invested in you as a founder. That also ended up being true. And so I think to the extent you can find funds that are probably more closely aligned, where you are more meaningful to them, I think that pays benefits for you if you're seeking, whether they're introductions to other team members, customers, et cetera. If you take, $250,000 from Lightspeed, I mean, they're managing how many billions of dollars? I mean, just the math doesn't work. I mean, if you're managing that much money, you can't pay attention to a $250,000 investment.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think there's definitely a trade-off between marquee name and, attention that you're going to get from the partners and stuff like that. So that kind of just want to move into the next kind of phase of this, is once you've kind of made this decision to raise capital and things like that, how do you find VCs? I feel like that's a very difficult challenge, especially for a lot of first-time founders. So I'm curious, how do most people find you to pitch you? And what are any tips or tricks you might have for someone who's looking to get connected to a venture capitalist to kind of pitch them their business idea?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can swing a dead cat in Palo Alto and find a venture capitalist. But look, I think for most venture capitalists don't meet with entrepreneurs who don't come to them through someone. It could be an advisor, it could be your lawyer, it could be, Silicon Valley Bank. I mean, there are lots of, if you will, service providers out there who most founders have incorporated, right? So it doesn't, I think that the important thing is not to do it blindly. I mean, you'll just end up in somebody's, it goes in their spam filter. So I think some kind of intro is useful. Something that's more meaningful is usually through an advisor or somebody who actually knows the venture capitalist rather than just a service provider. But I think, there are a bunch of good law firms and lawyers who do make those deals happen too.
Nice. Yeah, lawyers are a great asset for a lot of early stage founders. They're just so well connected. Another great asset is GSVlabs Passport platform. That's all I'll say about that. Couldn't help it. No, that's great. So, what are once someone kind of finally gets in touch with you and stuff like that, what are kind of the most common mistakes you see a founder making in that first kind of critical meeting?
The biggest difference, or the biggest challenge, I think, especially first-time founders face, is doing a product pitch rather than an investor pitch. A pitch to somebody you want to be your customer is probably around features, benefits, et cetera, rather than why this is a good business to invest in. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges or biggest problems that's pretty fixable. Another, this doesn't happen as much, but still sometimes happens. You'll have founders who have a great idea who've done this much validation with customers. In the consumer space, that's a question of kind of throwing it out there, but in the enterprise space, I don't know. I mean, I'm not smart enough to have that vision of the future, but there really is no excuse for not talking to potential customers. I can't tell you how many still founders I talk to who are like, well, I have this idea. And it's like, well, how do you know that's really the idea? And, the answer is, well, I just know. And, okay, good luck with that.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And, I just want to touch briefly on something you said, is the product pitch versus kind of the investor pitch, I think, is a really important distinction. And, on the investor pitch side of things, what are some of the key points folks should be thinking about? Because I think that's a little bit of an abstract concept sometimes.
No, sure. So Don Valentine used to, I guess, at Sequoia, founder of Sequoia Capital, used to, people would start to pitch him, and he'd stop them and say, who gives a... So, who cares about your product, right, is part of an investor pitch as opposed to a product pitch. Who's the buyer? Why is this going to make their life, radically better? How is this able to happen now? Why is it, 100 times better than what's out there? And what's your differentiation? And what, if any, sort of moat do you have as a result of that is going to make it harder for other people to compete with you? Those are all really important. The biggest reason venture capitalists pass on a pitch is because a market doesn't feel big. To what extent can you? And this is actually the hardest thing. I think part of the deck is being able to sort of, if you will, provide some kind of theory for why this is a big market, but ends up being pretty important. Having Gartner tell you that it's a $10 billion market, really not sufficient. That's a very tops-down approach, and most investors want to see something that's more bottoms-up.
Can you talk a little bit about the bottoms-up approach to this? Because this is also a thing I hear a lot from investors, is that it's really important to know your market size and properly evaluate it. How does a founder, kind of evaluate their market effectively, especially if, it's a new piece of technology or a newer kind of category?
I mean, there are different ways to go about that, ranging from what current solutions cost, what your, and there are some great things out there about one of the biggest challenges I think entrepreneurs have is pricing. It's a super strategic decision. If you're an enterprise and you haven't read this, Jerry Chen at Greylock did a fantastic piece. It's available on Greylock's site about pricing and thinking about pricing in the valley of death, because there is that. But to really think about, what the value is, what somebody either pays for something similar or what their total cost of ownership would be, how many, it's kind of McKinsey-esque, how many, potential clients are out there, to try to get some kind, it's not a precise number because it'll be wrong, but to really start to paint the picture of why it's big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something I'll just quickly throw out there, because my boss, our chief product officer, has been talking my ear off about this for the last 3 months. A really great tool is Alexa Web Rank. It shows you kind of how many visitors and things like that come to a site. And if you're kind of in a niche market and you go and look at Alexa Web Rank and they only have 100,000 visitors coming to their site, it's probably not a big enough product for you to go. So it's a little tip I just want to throw out there that I've actually found to work really, really well for a lot of founders. So one of the things that I also think has changed is the investing landscape has changed in recent years, and I think it's getting a lot harder for founders to raise money. So I'm kind of curious, from your point of view, what is the kind of profile of a fundable company now versus what it used to be?
Well, I think it depends. There's enterprise and consumer are two different things, right? In consumer, it's all about the numbers, and and not, to use Eric Ries's term, vanity metrics, but how many people are returning, how much time are they spent, whatever. It's not my space, so I can't speak to that as articulately. In the enterprise space, it does feel like everything keeps moving up, but there's a company in our portfolio that just had a pretty big preemptive A. The company hasn't yet done $1 million in ARR, which is unusual right now because that tends to be a metric for an A. But it has really impressive marquee customers, and as well as 2 pretty marquee partners. And the investor who sort of did the preemptive A actually went to the partner meeting with a big public company and met a bunch of customers. And so they gave us a really healthy term sheet as a result. And so I hate to put real stakes in the ground and say this, that, or the other thing, because the truth is your mileage may vary. But to whatever extent you have in the enterprise space referenceable customers, that's the most critical thing you can possibly have.
No, that's a great piece of advice, is introducing your customers to investors. It's really interesting.
Well, but be careful with that, because
Why is that?
well, early companies, so I have a lot of sympathy for entrepreneurs. I've built product, I've shipped product, and there's some VCs who don't have that experience. My husband, I'll give you a kind of example of this. My husband has been an usually a first business guy at a bunch of different startups, and a number of years ago he was pitching a firm and was with an associate at the firm, and now the venture funds obfuscate who's an associate by calling everybody partner. So and the associate, they had one client for the product that they had built, and it was Walmart, and it was the CIO of Walmart.com. And the associate's like, oh, I'd like to talk to them. My husband's like, I'm sure you would, but I'm like, where are we in your diligence process? Because if you only have one or two customers, by the time your customer gets the fifth VC calling, they're like, are you still going to be around next week? Because we've just taken 5 calls from people who are funding you. So I would steer clear of VCs who aren't going to be really respectful of the fact that your customers are really gold for you, and that should really be the last thing they are doing, because otherwise I think that's fairly abusive, but that's just my opinion.
No, that's great. I think that's really helpful. Some of what I personally think is really great advice for a lot of founders that are raising at early stage came from a founder that we work with out of the space. And they said, a really great way to go about raising money is to kind of start off with why the investor shouldn't invest in the business and what all the problems are and why this is never going to work. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on that and whether or not you agree or disagree with kind of that approach.
Never having been on the receiving end of that pitch, it's hard for me to opine. I've never had somebody say, let me tell you the 10 reasons you shouldn't do this. I do think, the converse of that, which I have seen work and I usually advise people to do, is the, why we win, why us. So, I just think there are two sides of that same coin. But I think you have to do something that's authentically you, that works. I wouldn't, it's a little bit gimmicky to me to, if that works for you, great, but I wouldn't architect my pitch around something that doesn't feel right to you.
Yeah, so that's another good question. You hear a lot of times VCs kind of really say, we invest in the person, we invest in you, not necessarily the business, especially at the early stage. Can you talk a little bit about how, what's the balance between telling the story of your product versus telling the story of who you are? How do you kind of balance that? Well,
I think that I think that the VCs will spend, especially in the really early stages, a fair amount of time getting to know you. You should want to do that because you kind of marry each other. And I think that any good pitch is going to have. There's a former CEO of a major bank that just sent me a security pitch, which was odd, that he's co-founding. And it was hilarious because I just got this deck that has all this information about the tech and zero information about the team. And I just wrote him and I said, do you mind sending me some information, like bios of the people who built the technology? So I think it's, VCs invest in people and they invest in markets, and they are investing in you, and so you do want to have information that's relevant about your domain expertise, your technical expertise, et cetera, obviously in any pitch, and you want to make sure you do spend time on that.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. So we only have about 5 or so minutes left. I have one more question, then I want to kind of jump into a little bit of a rapid fire thing. But what is like one tip you would give a founder? What is the favorite piece of advice you like to kind of give folks that are starting off or starting to raise money?
You should do as much diligence on who you're taking money from as the people do on you. These people are people you marry. You will be giving them updates, whatever else. And LinkedIn is a wonderful thing. You should find out what are these people like, especially if they're going to act as your lead investor. Are they really helpful? Whatever it is. If you're just seeking money, that's fine. That's a commodity. But there's plenty of it out there, and you should understand who you're getting financed by.
Would it ever be appropriate to ask for an introduction to another startup that they've invested in or something like that?
Sure. I think that's perfectly fair game.
No, that's a great tip. So I want to quickly run through a couple things, kind of just, are you long or are you short on a few just quick items. So first one is Bitcoin.
I'm longer blockchain, but that's
Longer
okay.
block. Okay, fair enough. And since we're sitting in a co-working space, how about WeWork?
I don't see anybody I'm friends with on Facebook, but I've been short WeWork for a long time.
It's turning out to be quite the call. All right, how about super funds like the Vision Fund, or Vision Fund 2 now, I guess? Are they good or bad? Why don't we say, is that good or bad for the ecosystem?
For whom?
The ecosystem.
Look, I think people do stupid things with too much money. I think the WeWork S1 is an excellent example of that. I love Scott Galloway's comment, it's death by S1 and math, right? So somebody very close to me is at one of the Vision Fund's investments. It's been interesting.
Very interesting. How about disproportionate voting rights for founders?
I know it really sounds like a great idea when you're a founder. I don't think they're a great thing for anyone. I mean, I think Roger McNamee put it really well, and if you've ever heard him talk about Zucked, fundamentally Google and Facebook are private companies with, public company stock. I don't think those are great. I know founders, you kind of go, great, I can retain control. I think that Andy Grove, the founder of Intel, used to start every Intel board meeting offering his resignation, because ultimately that is the role of a board, right? Are you the right CEO or not? Great, I'll get it off the table. Obviously, the board never took him up on his offer. I think it takes a rare person to do that, but I think that the converse of like, gee, I'm going to go ahead and give myself super voting rights, and I don't think that's a great thing for anyone.
Gotcha. And long or short on Uber?
I was one of the people ripping Uber off over Travis's misogyny a long time ago, but I know he's no longer with the company, but no. I mean, they're hemorrhaging cash, as is Lyft, unfortunately.
Well, that's my next question. What about Lyft?
Yeah, I mean, same, right? I mean,
Same,
I think
right,
the
fair
math.
enough.
I mean, look, it's all math, right? So, I loved Webvan up until the day they stopped delivering, right? These things are all being subsidized by venture capital and have been for a while. I just don't know when the music stops.
Oh, it's a great perspective. All right, we have, I guess, time for one question. So if anyone in the audience wants to ask one question, we have time for it. Ty, right over here, has a microphone. So if someone wants to raise their hand for one question, come on, there's got to be a taker in here.
There we go.
There we go.
Hi, I'm Brandon. I just got here from Texas, so I'm learning a little bit about Silicon Valley. One thing I'm learning is that there's a lot of VC money going behind alumni from Stanford or Harvard or wherever, and the success rate is abysmal compared to the dropouts. Do you see anything that's going to change that, or if so, is there any solution that we can start doing to try to figure out why VCs back the alumni?
Well, I think the dropouts, Bill Gates was a dropout, obviously, Mark Zuckerberg, but I don't necessarily know that that's true, what you've just said, in terms of, because there have been outsized returns by people who also graduated from college and who are alums. With respect, look, I think for better or for worse, and there's more and more being written about this, people back people who, look like them, right? So if you have women in your firm, you're more likely to back women. If you have Stanford grads at your firm, you're more likely to back Stanford grads. I think that's more human nature in terms of, how does that evolve? I think as you get more people from more diverse, whether it's schools, genders, ethnicities, that ends up changing it. But I don't think it's, I would actually argue with the premise that the dropouts have done better than the graduates, because I think there are cases for both.
Awesome. Well, listen, thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to come and listen to us talk. I think we're going to have networking and some drinks and stuff like that up next, but Alec will fill you in. So thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. And Slater is certainly right. We will be retiring in one moment for networking, drinks, and some food over in the lounge area. But before that happens, it's my pleasure to introduce Nikhil Sinha, the CEO of GSV Labs, to announce our winner.
Welcome again, everyone. And before I announce the winners, as it turns out, for this evening, one more round of applause for all the startups that presented today. So we hope to see you here again in about 6 weeks for the next round. Today's competition was diverse, it was interesting, and we certainly saw a lot of different ideas paraded around. I think it always gives me tremendous confidence when I come to these pitch nights about the future of the world because of these entrepreneurs who are thinking up terrific ways to improve the world that we live in. So tonight wasn't a disappointment. As judges, we had a tough time picking the winner. Therefore, we ended up compromising with winners. Both of them are extremely deserving. And I asked the judges to come up before I make the announcement. So tonight's joint winners are New Leaf Tech and CryptoWork. Congratulations. Great, thank you, and thanks again for coming and supporting all of the entrepreneurs who are working on these great projects, and we'll see you next time. Good night.
And please join us for networking, cocktails, and in the lounge.